Spock's Brain. This is episode 30.
You're listening to 70s Trek with Bob Turner and Kelly Casto, the fan podcast that looks at Star Trek in the 1970s. It was the decade that built a franchise.
Welcome to 70s Trek. This week, we take a look inside Spock's brain. You know, it's the one where the slinky brunette comes aboard the Enterprise and steals Spock's brain. I'm Bob Turner.
And I'm Kelly Casto. Then she takes Spock's brain and she puts it in a box so it can run their underground facility.
And Kirk, McCoy, and Scotty take a remote control Spock, that's Spock without his brain, on a landing party mission to find it, to find Spock's brain, not the facility. But they find the facility.
Oh, that's good. And Spock helps them by talking to them over a communicator. Well, not really a communicator. It was really Spock's brain talking to them, not remote control Spock.
And McCoy uses a get smart quick device called the Teacher to, well, I guess he got smart quick so he can put Spock's brain back inside Spock. That's remote control Spock who doesn't have a brain.
But McCoy starts to forget how to put Spock's brain back into Spock. So he was Spock. That's Spock now with his brain partially put back, kind of, sort of, help him, and he helps him finish the surgery.
And Kirk utterly violates the Prime Directive by completely interfering with how this society operates. Again, go figure.
Go figure. But before we talk about all of this...
Right, because we don't want to talk about it too much up right here.
No. Let me tell you how you can find us. Just go to our Facebook page at facebook.com/70s Trek. When you get there, leave us a question or a comment. You can also reach us by email at 70strek@gmail.com.
And don't forget to check iTunes for our show. Just search 70s Trek in the podcast section. And while you're there, please leave us a rating or a review because it helps other people find the show. Kelly, it's considered by many to be the worst Star Trek episode ever made. By the description we gave up above, you might see why. In 1995, Entertainment Weekly published a special Star Trek issue. And in it, Spock's brain was picked as the worst all-time episode.
But there's more to Spock's brain than just a search for, Spock's brain. There was a lot happening leading up to the production of this episode that may have influenced its production, maybe a little bit.
Yeah, just a little. I think you might be right. Why don't we talk about that a little bit? You know, it's funny because when you think about season 3, not many people like season 3. And the fact that it starts with Spock's brain, it's not a strong start.
No.
Not a strong start. But we have to remember what was happening before season 3. And in fact, Star Trek was really in a pretty good place because if you remember, at the end of season 2, there were some rumors that Star Trek might be canceled. I should say near the end of season 2. And there was a massive letter writing campaign. In fact, NBC reports that they received about 115,000 letters and petitions. Now, it wasn't just NBC getting letters, though, because tens of thousands of more went to local stations, newspapers. The TV Guide received some. Advertisers received letters and petitions. In all, there's been estimates that probably over 1 million pieces of mail were sent out during this campaign.
Wow.
Right. Can you again, we talk about this. This was in the 60s. There's no social media. There's no email. There's nothing to help people really get organized except them writing letters to each other. That's amazing. And the duplication technology was, that was not an easy task to get done. So in March 1968, NBC, after receiving all of this mail, they decide to take Star Trek off of the canceled list. Star Trek's coming back in the fall. This is stuff that everybody's excited about. Everybody connected to the show. All the fans are excited. They make the public announcement at the end of a couple of episodes at the end of season 2. And of course, even during that summer, that spring and summer, Star Trek looks like it's positioned to continue to be a big success. It receives some notable recognition. Kelly, this is some stuff I didn't know until researching it. They were tied with the Monkees for top shows that received the most fan mail.
Really?
Yes. All right. That's not a hard leap to figure out, especially when you think about this letter writing campaign. So they were getting lots of mail. But here's another one that not many people know. Star Trek was nominated for 5 Emmys. And in 1968, it included one for Best Dramatic Series. And that was their second nomination in that category. It was named number 1 most popular show by TV Week readers. TV Week was a national magazine, much like TV Guide was. Of course, we don't remember that one.
No.
The AMC model kit for the Enterprise, it had sold millions of units in its first year. I mean, it was making some serious cash.
Incredible.
Yes, the AC Nielsen Company named Star Trek a top 10 series in audience popularity. And at the end of season 2, Nielsen was estimating that their weekly audience was somewhere between 9 and 14 million households watching the show. That's pretty incredible.
It is. Why in the heck are they thinking of canceling it?
Right. In 67 and 68, Photoplay magazine chooses Star Trek as one of the most popular TV shows out there. So Star Trek seems like it's positioned to go on and have a really big third season. But then that's just stuff on the surface. And you know how sometimes you take a bite of what looks like a good apple and you get the brown gooey stuff underneath? Yeah, that's kind of what was happening underneath the surface of Star Trek. For the first 2 years, the relationship between NBC and Gene Roddenberry had been going downhill. And by the end of the second season, it was really going downhill. NBC had said, hey, great, you had this letter writing campaign. We're not going to cancel the show. We're going to put it on Friday nights at 7:30. Roddenberry reached out to NBC and said, hey, look, that's going to be tough for us. Our audience is not home at that time. Could you please move us to a better time slot when our audience is at home? And what I'll do is, he took a less prominent role in season 2. He said, I'll be back. I'll come back like I was in season 1. And I'll be active. I'll work 14 hours a day, and I'll make sure that the quality of scripts are the best you've ever seen. If you will just guarantee us that we've got a good time slot when our younger audience will be at home to watch. NBC says, absolutely, that's a great idea. We agree to that. 2 weeks later, NBC moves Star Trek to Friday nights at 10. It's worse. And what does Roddenberry do? He walks. Really, the only chip that he had in this game was his availability to the show. And so when NBC came back and called his bluff, more or less, he decided, well, then I'm out. Because you know what? I don't understand why I would work 14 hours and put my health at risk like I did in the first season and put all this time and energy into this show that's destined to fail because you put it on Friday nights at 10. And looking at it in that light, can any of us find anything wrong with that logic?
Not at all. Spock.
Thank you very much. I mean, it makes sense why he would want to walk. Why would I put my money and time and effort into this if you, NBC, don't care enough to give it a good time slot?
Right. Why would you?
Yeah, exactly. So they called his bluff. Gene walks. He just moves into this executive producer role, which really means day to day he's hands off. He gets memos and maybe adds his 2 cents here and there. But for the most part, the show is going to go to a new showrunner, or a line producer, as they called it then, too. Bob Justman, who's been with the show since The Cage, wants that job. And he's been telling Gene, hey, look, if you ever go up, let me know. I'd like to run the show. I want to be the showrunner. He is trying to position himself to get that job. What ends up happening, though, is a guy by the name of Fred Freiberger gets that job. And Justman, his feathers are a little bit ruffled.
Yeah.
You can understand that. I've been here the whole time. I've been making significant contributions, and I'm being looked over. So there was a little bit of unhappiness inside of the production team. Gene Roddenberry is now removed, and the showrunner is a guy who's never worked on Star Trek. He's worked on The Wild Wild West, but not Star Trek.
That's close.
It's close, though. Yeah, exactly. There is one more thing that kind of set Star Trek up to fail here. In the first season, the budget per episode was $193,500, and that is roughly $1.4 million in today's money. That got cut in the second season to $187,500 per episode. In the third season, NBC cuts it again down to $178,500 per episode. And when you think about it this way too, there was inflation and there were salary increases that had to come out of that reduced amount. The producers were on fire with worry over what to do. They were cutting scene budgets. They were cutting prop budgets. The show wasn't going to go on location anymore because they couldn't afford to do it. They were cutting out food service budgets. Everything you could think of, they were slashing. So the show, even though it had all of this success at the end of season 2, going into season 3, it's not in the best shape.
No, they were trying to kill it.
Kind of seems that way. And that's the situation. Sure, yeah, and that's the situation we had when the first 6 episodes were put into production. You kind of looked in detail about this episode. Why don't you talk about a little bit of that stuff?
Sure. Well, so Spock's Brain was the first episode aired for season 3. It wasn't the actual first one produced. It was the 6th for that season. It aired on Friday, September 20th, so the first episode of this season, 1968. It actually won that time slot with a 21.4% rating and a 36% share.
Wait a minute. You're saying Spock's Brain won its time slot?
It looks like it killed its time slot.
Wow, that is crazy.
Yeah. The guest star, Marge Doucet, who played Kara, she was that slinky brunette. She should be real familiar to everybody, and especially 70s TV viewers. She appeared in shows like The Wild Wild West, Bonanza, Daniel Boone, Hawaii Five-0, Medical Center, Hogan's Hero, McCloud, The Odd Couple, Love, American Style, Macmillan and Wife, Mannix, The Streets of San Francisco, The Bionic Woman, and there's a ton more.
And she's so familiar. When you see her on the screen, you're instantly like, wow, I know that face. And I kind of looked her up a little bit too, trying to figure out, is there something triggering this? Do I know her from somewhere? And it's not that I knew her from anywhere else. I knew her from a bunch of other stuff.
From everywhere.
Yes. What a resume she has.
Oh, definitely. The episode was written by Gene Kuhn, the other Gene, as we've talked about back in episode 7. And Gene used his pen name on this one, Lee Cronin.
Do you know why he did that?
Well, then.
Okay, so hold on. In 2016 or 2017, we might say, well, would you use your name on Spock's Brain?
Exactly.
But I think he had already left the show. And so what he was doing was, so he didn't get in trouble with his new employers, was writing scripts for Star Trek under Lee Cronin.
Right.
So he could still make some money but not get in trouble.
Yeah, and we talked about that some in episode 7. It was directed by Mark Daniels. The script, now, it kind of suffered from some simple setbacks. The crew solves problems really, really too fast.
Really too fast.
Piecing things together that really, how did you connect those dots?
Not like I'm gritting my teeth like,
Yes. The only one, so I have to kind of go aside here. The only one that just kind of was hysterical to me is they're in that Sigma Draconis solar system, and they're trying to figure out which of 3 planets. And one has a strange energy that they shouldn't have. But Sulu goes off and says, "Oh, I think it's this one." And Chekhov says, "Well, I think it's this one." And Kirk goes, "I think it's this one. It's only a hunch." Oh, and by the way, there was this strange energy that they had no business having on that planet. So,
I kind of like that little bit of deductive reasoning, and of course, Kirk goes on his gut again, as usual. He goes on a hunch, but I kind of liked how there was a planet that was sort of similar to our 22nd century, if I'm remembering correctly, but still didn't have the technology that Kara's ship used, which was ion drive. They didn't have that technology. So you might think, well, maybe somebody there has it. So we'll go to the more advanced planet first. But you're right. Kirk didn't do that. There was this weird energy, and it just sort of got under his skin, and he thought, I don't know, I'm going on a hunch.
Yeah.
But that's what's great about James T. He's got good hunches.
He's got great hunches. And he likes to put his subordinates to shame.
I'd love to see. Now, I mentioned that little scene later, and we can talk about it now a little bit if you want. But I thought the interplay between the characters was great because you don't always see that kind of interplay with the junior officers, with Chekhov and Sulu. Usually it's a little bit here or there, but I thought it was a nice scene. Yeah. And you're right. Kirk browbeats him a little bit. So you're telling me that there's not a planet in the system that can do what, supposedly they're looking for. And Chekhov says, right. And he gets a little grin on his face. He's like, okay, I agree. So he's kind of messing with him. Yeah.
Yeah, he is. Right. But you're right. It was a nice scene where he's asking opinions of his crew. So
at that point in the episode, it was kind of a mystery. It was a bit of a whodunit. They're trying to find clues, and I thought that was cool. If that kind of interplay and that kind of deductive reasoning had continued through the episode, it might be a little different. But then the episode changes. Go ahead.
All right. So there are many logical problems here. So many, in fact, that the script was almost funny. They even toyed with the idea. Bob Justman actually suggested adding jokes to make it funny. Kind of like, Trouble with Tribbles or A Piece of the Action.
Can you imagine? I mean, and you're right. The fact that this is played so seriously, it's almost like watching Batman from the 60s. It's campy because it is played so seriously. But can you imagine if they had tried to turn this into more of a jokey episode with, remote control Spock walking around?
Where did you put your brain today, Spock?
And we move on.
So they obviously they didn't do that.
Yeah, that's probably a good thing.
Yeah, probably. What happened in Spock's brain was that the desire to tell this unbelievable story won over the need to really make it scientifically or just plausible, period.
Yeah, and that's kind of what marks those 50s, sci-fi movies, B movies. It was an outlandish, incredible, unbelievable, jaw-dropping story that couldn't happen scientifically. Yeah. And, the audience picked up on that.
Right.
And that's why they were B movies.
Exactly. And why, Spock was, well, we'll get to it. So here's some things that went wrong in this episode. We'll just go over the list here. The title. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. The world, you can't be like, the world is hollow and I've touched the sky or whatever that one is. It's
Spock's
brain.
I was thinking about this too because I thought you might bring it up. In in Latin, the word for brain is cerebrum, and the word for is autumn. And I was thinking cerebrum autumn Spock, brain of Spock.
That would be much better.
That would be much better than Spock's brain. Go figure.
Yep. All right. When Kara beams aboard the Enterprise, Dusay is playing her very childlike. Yet she would have to use the teacher to surgically remove Spock's brain. So how could she be childlike?
Right. Oh, that's a big one. You're right. 'Cause she is kind of like, hi, I'm Kara.
Yeah.
How you doing?
Right. Kind of touching Kirk as she goes or touches Spock's head.
She's got that childlike smile on her face.
Yeah.
She's not business-like Kara that comes out of the teacher later. She's fun-loving, childlike Kara.
Right. Hey, I got out of the planet to go for a joyride in this
Absolutely.
Ion
I
ship.
took the Ion Drive ship for a ride. I just happened to see you guys. Hi, want to hang out?
Can I take a piece of your back with me?
I hear you have a great brain. Can I see it?
Yeah.
That's rad. Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
All right. Remote control Spock lurches through scenes like a B-movie Frankenstein movie.
I mean, he does, doesn't he?
Yeah,
Go ahead, say it.
And he's remote control Spock.
Yeah, that's kind of a big one to me. He's remote controlled. If you remember anything about this episode, it's that Spock walking around and somebody's got a remote. I don't know. There's not much more to say about that.
And McCoy and Scotty are fighting over the control. Let me control him. All right. The Morg and I Morg speak English.
Yeah, that's always an issue. Always.
Yeah. Must be a childlike language. So, if the Morg and I Morg had been separated for millions of years, how are they exactly, continuing their species?
Oh, how are they, getting busy?
Getting busy.
How are they doing that? You're right, because the girls really, it's like a junior high dance. The boys are on the surface in the cold. The girls are downstairs with the music going, having a good time, and nobody's really dancing.
No. Well, they lure them into an elevator. Wow. Hey, we got some goodies here.
They might. That's right. We don't know for sure.
The lights, I should say. If you get that reference. All right. Now, we alluded to it. Would Spock's brain really be communicating over a communicator channel using Spock's voice?
Oh, my God. I know. This one's a big one, too. It's one thing. Let's assume Spock's brain in the black box could generate a radio frequency. Great. Let's assume then that can be translated into a verbal communication and picked up by a communicator. Yeah. I'm still with you. But it's going to sound like Leonard Nimoy?
Well, why he's waiting for them to show up to rescue him? He had to do something.
Do you think he got it? Yeah, you got an equalizer out and started messing with it?
Yeah, must have.
I am pumping water, I am filtrating air, and I'm tweaking the vocal resonance of my audio so it sounds like me. Okay.
Kirk also has one of the worst lines ever.
Can I say it?
Yes, do it, please.
Please? Okay.
Please.
And Shatner's over-the-top delivery, it doesn't help. It's when they finally figure out where and what Spock's brain is doing, and Shatner says, Spock's brain controls. And his hands are up and they're wide. As an adult, there are moments in meetings, in a professional setting
I know where you're going.
And this pops in my brain as someone is either speaking like Shatner or they're talking about controlling something. And in my mind pops Spock's brain controls. And of course, I'm in the corner turning red, biting my lip, trying not to laugh out loud and making a scene. Anyway. It is the worst line, and yet it's so bad. It's good. Go ahead.
All right. Then there's the surgery to put Spock's brain back into Spock.
Oh, my.
Yeah. We hit on it, a lot of it already, but McCoy gets smart quickly.
Thank God for the teacher.
Yes, the teacher. Love the teacher. Then it wears off.
So the teacher must be a lot like me in school. Very short-term memory. I was in class. I heard it. I know it for the question. As I go out the door and walk down the hall, I have no idea what I just learned. That must be like the teacher.
It's exactly like the teacher.
Go figure.
Go figure. So there's connecting Spock's vocal cords so Spock can help in
that's just
the surgery.
That's just outlandish, isn't it?
It's crazy.
I mean, and of course, who suggests it? It's Kirk. Okay, well, you are a wonderful Starship Commander. You have no business telling McCoy what he should be doing during surgery. That is the worst idea ever. Not only is it just a bad idea, it's a stupid idea. Captain, and McCoy should have said, don't you think McCoy should have said, shut the hell up, Jim. I'm doing surgery.
No. Captain, you're the captain, not a surgeon.
Yeah, that's right. Damn it, Jim, I'm a surgeon, not a... I'm a surgeon.
I'm a surgeon. Leave me alone. Then the surgery's over. Spock sits right up as if nothing happened.
Did you notice his hair?
And his hair was perfect.
It's all in shape. He sits up. He starts having a conversation, begins to riff like, oh, yeah, no big deal. My brain was always there.
Yeah. And McCoy's last line? I knew I shouldn't have connected his vocal cords.
I'm laughing because it's so bad.
It is. All right. So Shatner called this one of the series' worst episodes, calling the episode plot a tribute to the NBC executives who slashed the show's budget and placed it in a bad time slot.
It sounds like he might have been a little irritated.
Yeah, maybe a little bitter. A
little bit.
Leonard Nimoy said, during the entire shooting of that episode, I was embarrassed.
Ooh.
I read the whole quote, and he goes on about it too. Producer Fred Freiberger called it a stupid-assed show.
Yeah, he might be right.
Yeah, I think he is. And James Doohan commented, we can look at it now and think it's silly, but it didn't seem silly, or it didn't seem that bad then. I didn't think it was great. I could tell there had been a drop in the writing since the previous year, but I saw the potential of something there.
That's interesting because, actually, there is some potential in this episode. And I spent a little time thinking about it because it's really just easy to look at remote control Spock and...
Yeah, tee-hee-hee.
Right, and then, Kara saying, brain, what is brain?
What is brain?
It's easy to look at those things and go, God, this is just the worst. Because you know what? Those are really, really bad things for the show that brought us morality plays, that brought us the Corbomite maneuver, that brought us Amok Time. Those were some pretty nice heights. This is a pretty low. But it occurred to me that there are some highlights, and I just wanted to touch on those real quick. First of all, the guest star, Marge Doucet. I think she does a wonderful job. She's given a tough assignment, number one. But what she does with it, I think, is awesome. I mean, when she's asked to portray basically a simpleton, a childlike woman, she does an awesome job with it. But then she's asked to come out of the teacher and you can see how her personality changed when she did that. And now suddenly she's an entirely different character, which is exactly what is supposed to happen. And she did it seamlessly.
Yeah, she did. The one thing I noticed when she was acting, like the childlike, the expression on her face was like a baby that was that's concentrating, and just you could tell the baby's absorbing knowledge.
Yeah.
Just kind of face kind of scrunched a little bit, and I don't understand. You got
right. Right. I think she did an awesome job at that. So, and she's a very pretty woman. So I think she did a wonderful job. She was a great person to cast in that role. We've talked about the scene on the bridge a little bit between Kirk Chekhov and Sulu. I liked it, maybe I guess a little bit more than you did. I love the interplay between the characters. You don't always see that. Sometimes you see Kirk and McCoy off having a heart-to-heart, or you see Spock and Kirk off doing whatever. You don't always see Kirk and Sulu and Chekhov playing together, and it was nice to see that.
Well, Uhura was in there too.
She was, not as much, but you're right. I'm sorry. She was. Good point. I really liked how it was shot. Director Mark Daniels puts the camera behind the captain's chair. Now, this is a new angle. I don't know if you realize it, but we've never seen it from that angle before, and we don't ever do again. Usually we see the bridge and the crew from the front or from the side, never from behind. And that angle kind of, for me anyway, I felt like I was on the bridge. It puts you more on the bridge, I think, than most of the other angles do.
And, when I rewatched it, now I didn't put two and two together that this had never really happened before, but I caught myself just staring at the bridge, looking at different things I'd never really saw before.
Yeah. Yes, because the camera is typically over Kirk's shoulder on the upper level, higher up, and it's more of a wider shot. This is like right behind the captain's chair. And there's a moment even when you see Kirk's shoulders and head, and he gets up and he walks around and he turns around, and you see what's on the screen. That shot is really kind of cool. I wish they would have used it more often. I really liked it. I thought it really put the viewer right in the middle of things. Along with other things that I liked that I thought were highlights, the line that the morgue uses to describe the iMorgue, I think is awesome. The bringers of pain and delight. Oh my God, that is memorable. And I think you and I used to joke about that line in college a little bit, if I remember correctly. And I'm sure there are probably some Trek fans who jokingly refer to their significant others with that line.
Not me.
No, not me, honey, because I wouldn't do that. You are my bringer of delight only. Absolutely. Here's a great piece of acting in this episode. I love D. Kelly after McCoy comes out of the teacher. And he kind of looks up with this dawning awareness. And he says, of course, a child could do it. A child could do it. And it just really conveys that not only does he have the knowledge, but the knowledge is obvious and simple to him in that moment. There's so many other ways that you could have written that where it wouldn't have worked as well. Oh, that's how you do it. Or, okay, I'm ready to go. Let's do it, or something like that. But he's a scientist as well as a doctor. And so he's got that fascination of, oh, now you're showing me how this works. Yes, that is simple. Yes, I get it. I love that. I thought that was awesome.
I did too. So when I rewatched it, the whole time they talked about the teacher and all of that, I was thinking The Matrix. Yeah,
right. Great point.
And then you look at DeForest Kelley and how he sold it. And then you go to The Matrix and, Neo's like, I know Kung Fu.
Right.
Yeah, okay. Come on.
Right.
DeForest Kelley knocks it out of the park.
Hang on to that idea of The Matrix for a second. Well, actually, don't hang on to it. Just hold it in your hand, because here we go. It seems to me that a lot of things in this episode could have been fixed if the writer, Mr. Cronin /Kuhn, instead of having Kara steal Spock's brain, she simply kidnaps Spock and plugs Spock into their computer like the Matrix or like Reg Barclay was in The Next Generation.
Right.
You do that, and suddenly this episode's very different. Now you don't see that dumb black box.
You don't have remote control Spock.
You don't have remote control Spock. You don't have the disembodied voice over the communicator. You don't have Spock talking during surgery because, let's face it, there wouldn't be a surgery at that point.
Right.
Instead, you have the drama maybe at the end of trying to disconnect Spock. So they don't disconnect him and leave his mind in the computer. But I think if they had done that, that removes a lot of the silly B-movie elements that really kind of tear this episode down. Because the idea of a very simple people who need a controller to help them live their lives, that's an interesting concept. And the fact that they've evolved differently with men above and females below, we actually could have spent more time learning more about all of that even. Maybe the teacher tells us or whatever it is. Instead of getting so wrapped up in, well, Spock's brain has gone from his body and we have to take remote control Spock for a walk. I mean, that pulls it down. One simple little thing, I think, flips the episode a lot.
I think you're right.
But that's just one solution. There could be lots of others. Who knows? Because this episode ranks so poorly with Trek fans, it's also gained some notoriety. Fish, the band Fish, that was real popular in the 90s, they actually have a song called Spock's Brain that they perform live. In addition to that, there was even a stage play, a small stage play made about Spock's brain. Oh, go figure. I mean, that's when you know it's so bad it's good kind of thing. Exactly. Hey, closing remarks, Kelly. You got anything left in the tank?
I got to tell you, we kid about this, but when I was a kid watching it, I loved this episode for one simple fact, and it was the teacher.
Oh, cool.
So this is unfortunately one of my favorite episodes as a kid, just because of what that said to me is, future and being able to learn just through a device, not going through years of studying. So
it's an interesting concept, and certainly that concept deserved more than what it got in this episode.
I agree.
All right. Next week, hey, we're going to have a little fun. We're going to recast Star Trek with actors from the 70s. So, for example, on my Enterprise, Farrah Fawcett would play Yeoman Rand. Yeah. Hey, you can leave us your 70s cast for the show at our Facebook page. It's facebook.com/70s Trek. We'll talk about it.
All right. We'll see you then.
Thanks for listening to 70s Trek, an independent fan production. Join us next week as we explore more about the production, the actors, the producers, and the influencers of Star Trek in the lost decade of the 1970s on 70s Trek.